Hello everybody, vanburman here, and welcome to another video discussing Final Fantasy pretty much. Actually, I don't even need these on, do I? There, I can hear a bit better now. I'm not listening to anything, so why would I? There. So, why would I need them on? It's a very good question. And so, today I wanted to talk about the fact that we have more news of a potential Final Fantasy VII remake in the offing. Now, don't get me wrong, every time Square-Enix comes in trouble, or every time there's any sort of really discussion on, the future of Final Fantasy, we always get one of the developers coming out with a line about a Final Fantasy VII remake. And the fact of the matter is that, I don't know how a lot of people feel, but personally, I'm a bit tired of it all, to be honest. I think if it was something they were going to do, they would have done it by now, and because we basically know what Square Enix is trying to achieve with the Final Fantasy series. Let's look at 13.2 and 13.3. They've gone the way of many AAA title developers by actually, releasing a game and then wanting a whole load of DLC that you can buy for it. Final Fantasy 13.2 and 13.3 are both sort of Final Fantasy dress-ups. Final Fantasy cosplay with, only certain characters being able to dress up. I think I saw a DLC for Final Fantasy 13.3, which was you could dress Lightning up as Yuna and have Yuna's staff, and it was just like, you have got to be kidding me. I thought Cloud was bad enough. Because there are obvious comparisons between the two, the fact that they look vaguely the same, but yeah, I was really not impressed with the whole Yuna thing, and it really takes it so far away from, even though I don't have a PlayStation 3 and I wouldn't go out and buy it anyway, I'm glad, actually, in fact, because, why you want to dress up your main character as a previous Final Fantasy character, I have no idea. It's clearly a money-making scheme. They realise that players haven't had the chance to play as Cloud since Final Fantasy VII. Well, not really. I know you could in Dissidia, and I think that's probably about it. But for example, obviously Cloud made a cameo in the Dirge of Cerberus, and he looked pretty badass on Fenrir. But players haven't really seen much of him apart from in the film, and as I say, been able to play with him. And now they release a costume pack for Lightning, which allows you to dress up as Cloud and wield Cloud's new sword, I believe, rather than the Buster sword. So yeah, it is basically a money grabbing scheme again. In 13.2 you could get the Colosseum packs where you could unlock characters to be your third companion. It seems a bit strange to me that you would do all that to unlock Lightning and then have Lightning walking around with Sarah and Noel, even though they're on a journey to go and meet her. It breaks the lore, it breaks the story, and for me it's a major turn off. I don't really understand why you would add that sort of thing in. Story driven games, the players need to be sort of almost led down the path. Obviously some stuff can be open world. I'm not saying it should be like Final Fantasy 13.3 and just be a X-bashing, run straight ahead game. It should be, basically more along the style of the old Final Fantasies. In fact, there's some exploration to be done, but there's nothing like DLC or that sort of DLC which is going to break the game. In fact, in games that are extremely story driven, I'm not really sure there's anything you can have for DLC. Maybe if it, for example, affected a mini game within the actual game, then I guess that would be fine. I could sort of see that happening, maybe. If they brought out something else like Blitzball, which I personally enjoyed, you might be able to, I don't know, get some sort of boost or unlock, a player for it, or something which isn't game breaking and takes away from the lore. So, for example, you'll be able to have a character who had died playing for your Blitzball team, purely because it just doesn't make sense. And that's one of the main issues that I have, is the fact that there's no continuity of lore with the new games, and it's very much driven towards after sales on DLC. Now, of course, the problem with the 13 series is that it's not sold very well. They spent a stupid amount of money on 13, spent a stupidly long time to do it as well. I know it, in the grand scheme of things, compared to other games, it's not been that long. But it also did terribly, really, for the amount of money that was spent on it in comparison to some of the older games. I know what you're saying, technology's advanced and it might be more expensive to do, HD graphics and stuff like that. And if they remade a game exactly like Final Fantasy VII again, it would cost them half as much money and take them half as long. I mean, yes, all that is probably true. But I mean, it was a different time then. And I don't think Square-Enix will ever get the same success again as they did with Final Fantasy VII. It's just not. I don't think it's possible, quite frankly. In terms of the highest grossing game, Final Fantasy VII is second only to Final Fantasy XI. But of course, 11, an MMO, you've got thousands of players paying every month to be in the game. So if you actually take the initial cost of a game, because obviously you have to pay Final Fantasy XI, then Final Fantasy VII is by far made Square Enix the most money. I mean, that's why they milk the Final Fantasy VII universe so much. There's so many spin-off games for everything. You got Crisis Core, you have the Dirge of Cerberus. There was another. Oh, there was. Was it before Crisis that was released on some obscure mobile device that I never got to play? Things like that. It is. They knew that it was a good money-making scheme because so many people have been touched and affected by that universe and by that story, and the fact that they can't do it again anymore really is testament to how their business model works. And for those of you that don't know, Square Enix are in, the polite way to say it is that probably that they don't have a lot of money, would be the best way for me to put it. They are floundering a bit, and as a fan of the Final Fantasy series and of Square Enix, you might not think it that I'm a fan, it's really disheartening to see all this unfolding. And I'm on quite a few forums and groups that discuss Final Fantasy, and you've got this one or two really hardcore Final Fantasy fans, like the same as me, but those people that are still blinded by their love for Final Fantasy, and they're willing to overlook all of these terrible business and lore mistakes that they're making. And I do feel really sorry for those people, because until you wake up and and really see what's going on, these problems are going to keep happening. And I really hope that when the sales figures for 13.3 comes out, that I'm justified in what I'm saying, and that it's made them barely any money. And the general consensus is that it's, I don't know, people like the dressing up as Cloud, but if I had 13.3, I probably would go around and dress Lightning up as Cloud, but I think you're pulling on people's nostalgic heartstrings there, and I don't think it's the right way to go about your business. I know Square Enix don't watch my channel, but you should, Square Enix, because if you did, then you'd realise that things I'm saying aren't just held by me, they're held by many people, and the reason that we keep going on about it is because we do love the series. There's no getting away from that at all, and until they make changes for the better, it's only going to get worse. I worry for Final Fantasy 15 because a lot of people are really holding on to the idea that 15 is going to be the bastion of the rebirth of the Final Fantasy series. And I am now the eternal cynic when it comes to Final Fantasy. I used to be the eternal optimist. I mean, waiting for Final Fantasy X to come out and then getting my hands on it and playing it, it was just amazing. And then I waited. I saw Final Fantasy XI come out, and I was just like, well, okay, it's a bit of a strange move. And then I got Final Fantasy X-2, which was once again a bit on the strange side. Overall, it was a bit of a crazy game, but the fact that it ended off the story, I mean, they sort of left it at the end of 10 for it to be carried on, which, I don't know. I guess that's a bit ambiguous, but hence are most stories in the Final Fantasy universe. But then, of course, we got Final Fantasy 12. Now, the thing about Final Fantasy 12 is, I must have had about 100 PlayStation 2 games, and I'm not lying to you, I literally traded in about 50 of them. I didn't have any money at the time, just to buy Final Fantasy 12, and I got it home, played it. I enjoyed it for the first bit, and then sort of after about 5 hours, I was there thinking, it's not a bad game, but this isn't really Final Fantasy. You know, I mean, if this was called anything else and I'd just bought it on the off chance, I'd be like, this is a pretty cool game. But the fact that it was supposed to be a Final Fantasy game, I was really disheartened by it. And then, of course, at that point, 13 then became the bastion for me, the bastion of hope that the Final Fantasy series would be reborn. And I spent far too much money on 13. I spent £60 to get the Japanese Blu-ray version of Final Fantasy VII Advent Children imported. Okay, that might sound a bit long-winded, but effectively, the reason I did that is because it came with a demo disc for Final Fantasy 13, which I still have somewhere. And they only released the demo in Japan because they couldn't release it everywhere else because they were not going to release a demo for the Xbox 360. And I got it and I played it and I thought, there's some bits in here that I don't like. You know, it looks really nice. I was more blown away by the graphics when I played the demo. And I was like, well, you know, these things can be changed and maybe the battle system gets better as you get used to it. So I gave the benefit of the doubt, and then the collector's edition came out, or then it was coming up, and I pre-ordered the collector's edition, spent another £60 on that, and it was probably one of the most disappointing Final Fantasy experiences I've ever had. Now maybe that's because I held the series in such high regard, perhaps, or, well, my opinion now is that it was utter rubbish, quite frankly, and all the good elements in there were really sort of destroyed by all the game-breaking elements. And I'm not going to go on about the problems of Final Fantasy 13, they were documented, and it's quite a commonly held opinion that Final Fantasy 13 was a pretty poor example of a Final Fantasy game. We then had Final Fantasy 13-2, I believe, that came out. I bought that, played it about halfway through, and then sacked it off. As soon as I was, you know, as soon as it was sort of like trying to be a half Final Fantasy, half Pokemon clone, it wasn't even worth playing. The story was disjointed at best, and it was just another money-making scheme to get you to go and download more DLC. And then, despite this, I still went out and bought Final Fantasy 14. Why? Because I hadn't had a good RPG to play in ages, and I just bought myself a new laptop, so I thought, yep, my computer can play this, let's buy it. And Final Fantasy 14 was utter garbage, and it has cost Square-Enix so much money because of the failure of 14. You know, they wanted it to do what 11 did and bring them in that huge amount of money because people would be paying monthly for the game. And then Final Fantasy 14 A Realm Reborn came out. I bought one subscription. It's now finished. I played it for about 2 weeks. It was fairly enjoyable, but the fact that I've got Guild Wars on my computer just meant that there was no point in playing or buying into it for any longer. It's a much better game than it was at 14, but it's still not good enough. I don't think there's not many games good enough for me to pay £9 a month to play, quite frankly, after I spent £40 or £35 buying the actual game. If it's free and then you pay a subscription, fine, but not go out and spend £30 or £35 and then pay £9 a month. No. So we're now at this point where they're talking about a possible Final Fantasy VII remake, and we're getting close to obviously 15 being released. I am extremely pessimistic regarding Final Fantasy's future, and I'm not so sure it's going to get past 15. I don't think there will be a 16. 15 would have to sell really, really well for there to be a 16. I think if 15 fails, then Square-Enix will remake 7. And I think when that fails, Square-Enix will be done. I don't like to be so pessimistic about a company, which I don't know. I don't even really like Square-Enix. I like Square. I like what Square have done. and then in turn I'll obviously like Square-Enix. But this is the one company that can save the RPG genre, because quite frankly it's got far too mainstream. For example, dance music has just become mainstream now in the music world. There was a point where I listened to dance music and enjoy it, and now I can't find a dance track that hasn't got David Guetta or will.i.am on it, quite frankly, and they're pop artists, not dance artists. There's a huge difference. So you have to go to a more sort of off-the-cuff genre in order to find something which is actually dance music, not pop. And it's a similar thing with RPGs. Everything tries to say it's an RPG nowadays. My guess is that Call of Duty will bring out the next installment in their illustrious franchise, and they'll probably say that's an RPG, and I'll go, why is that an RPG then? Because you level up, duh. So yeah, okay, if leveling up makes an RPG, then I don't really know what to say about that anymore. So that's my rant over. It's been quite a calm, collected rant, but I get a lot of aggro off people about my views on it, about my view on Square-Enix, but I don't feel bad that they feel that way. I can't help feeling they're misguided, because I've gone through this. I went through this when 12 and 13 came out, and I still believed that they could rectify it, and I just don't believe it anymore. You always do have that hope against hope, though, and I think that's the thing that's killing me. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, queries, leave them down below, and I will get back to you, and possibly make a video on something which you would like me to discuss. I'll see you very soon, guys.